Hi there, it's Robin from Level 7 here, and I've been studying personal development and change for most of my life. And in fact, I remember it was probably 1996 when I first read an introductory book about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. Now, back in those days, it was mostly to be fixing myself with things like confidence and self-esteem and all those sorts of things. But today I spend all my time helping other people with their journey, sort of like sharing what I've learned from mine, helping them make the change that they want in their life. So today, what I wanted to do was share the 7 areas of focus, or pillars if you want to call them that, which I think I've realised are the real fundamental elements of change. And so, like, if we're going to make big change in our lives, then we're going to need to do some work in each one of these 7 areas. And that's what this little video is about, just what I think those 7 areas are and what's included of them. And this sort of forms my philosophy, so the way that I sort of help people make change and things like that. So while I don't do fixed programs for people, that's not how I work, but there is a framework, a way I'm thinking and approaching this, and it is these 7 areas, and that's what I want to share with you today. So our first area is all about goals, or vision, really, for the future. Now, this is an important element, and I always think it was the first one, really, because we can't hit a target that we can't see, or we at least need to have it defined about where we want it to get to. Simply because how will we know that we've arrived? How will we know that we've actually achieved or got to where we want to be? So that's really important, and having that very, very clear in our minds, I think is really, really important. But there's a couple of other elements that I think are less obvious that are worth pointing out here. When we've got all of our material needs met, our goals and our vision for the future really need to take on a different shape, especially if we want to significantly change our experience of being alive. Now, I believe that they should be purpose-led, not ego-driven. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't have all the conventional stuff of success of, houses, cars, money, clothes, whatever that might mean for you. But these things are secondary. They're not the primary objective of where we're moving towards. They're sort of like that they come as a byproduct, if you like. And that's important because then they don't form part of any fragile identity that we actually create or we're moving into. That's really important if we're going to feel really good about ourselves and, have less ups and downs and things. So to fuel this, though, and make you really feel alive, it needs to be passion orientated. And just to give you a little quote from Steve Jobs. So Steve Jobs says, if you're working on something that's exciting and you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision pulls you. Now, I think that's really powerful, and that's really where we're sort of aiming for if we're wanting to feel good about ourselves. So essentially, when we're doing work which we think is worth doing, it doesn't really feel like work. And we don't need to be forced into it. We don't need separation. What we really want and need is sort of integration. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that when we're working on the vision which is right for us, that we have a wonderfully balanced life. In fact, lots of people which have really passion-driven lives, actually, they're not balanced at all. And that's okay, as long as what we have is self-awareness built into that. And the reason is so that we don't then regret our decisions as a result of our intense focus. And if I just finish this little section with a quote from Walter Chrysler. He says, I feel sorry for the person who can't get genuinely excited about his work. Not only will he never be satisfied, but he will never achieve anything worthwhile. So our second area is strategy, which is really about how we're going to get from point A to point B. And some clever sausage in the past once said that preparation not only precedes power, but actually creates it. And that's what strategy is really about, is having a plan, not experimenting the whole way through this, but having a very considered way of going about it. So what that really means is being really clear about the decisions that we make. And most of the time it's about what we're going to say no to that makes the biggest difference. So strategy really is about being focused and really harnessing our attention. Now, I want to sort of share a quote at this point by Eisenhower. So, Eisenhower, and if you don't know, he was the US general in the Second World War, and later he became president. But he says, in preparing for battle, I have always found that plans are useless, but planning to be indispensable. So, a winning strategy is often emergent then. So, it's not about being a slave to the strategy. This is the plan, and this is where we're going to do it, and we're not going to deviate. It's about having that space to be able to move and do what makes sense. But it's about clarity of direction, the direction that we're moving into. And it requires us to have clear priorities and be conscious of our energy levels and what gives us energy, how we're going to use resources, and how we're going to decide. And the distinction that I think is worth bringing out is that goals are intentions, the things we want, but it's decisions that create commitment, and commitment leads to action, and action is what leads to achievement. So another way of thinking about this is most of us set things like outcome goals. We want to get here. And that's good. We do need that. That's the part, the fundamental part where I started this journey off. But what we need to think about is outcome goals don't resolve themselves. They don't achieve themselves. It's process goals that actually make the difference. So we need to change outcome goals into process goals. And when you focus on the process, the outcomes will take care of themselves. So all this strategy stuff then really comes down to managing your own integrity around your decisions, and then checking on your level of commitment, because it's a level of commitment that will have you achieve your goals, and that will come down to decisions that we make moment by moment, but that will be guided by that guiding principle. So the third area I want to talk to you about is what I call identity. Now, whenever it comes to achievement of any sort, the truth is that we're only going to be limited by the vision we have of ourselves. So we literally are living into the story we tell ourselves about ourselves. Now, this story is what I think of as our identity. And identity really comes down to just the choices that we make. Who we are is a result of our choices. So we are what we do. So the thing is, fundamentally, it's actually a construct of the mind. The creation of this equals that. And that's a wonderful thing, because what that puts us in control of is our choices. We can choose moment by moment. But what that requires is what I think of as radical ownership. Owning everything which is going on, seeing ourselves as the creator and being able to decide. So we need to see ourselves being at choice all the time. Now, being at choice all the time really needs us to skillfully navigate and transcend our ego states, sort of accepting reality as it is and not taking ourselves too seriously. And when we can do that, we can sit comfortably in true self-esteem and integrity as well. So essentially, the identity component is about, we need to become a sort of person that creates the sort of results that we want. So we, whatever it is, we have to work at that level of identity, and that's about choices. So in the words of Eric Fromm, he said that human freedom is restricted to the extent to which we are bound by our egos. So our identity is moving beyond that and working with it. So our fourth area is about mindset. Now, I know lots of people love this idea of mindset and what we sort of do in the mindset area, and it is such a big part of what I do with people. But mindset is greater than a set of beliefs. It's about the relationship we have with our voice in our head and with our emotions. And it means becoming emotionally mature and adjusting our orientation to the world and the way that we see ourselves as well. So what that's really about overcoming, though, some internal resistance, that's stopping us having the mindset, and developing what I think of as a master mindset, which is like constant improvement and getting better and better. And for that, really, what it requires us to do is to be very clear about how our experience is being created, and then moving to a space of conscious creation, so that we're not limited by our perceptions and our ego stories, and that's where it links in nicely with the identity space. But what it requires of us, really, is to be able to hold our attention in the present moment, because that's where all life really is. It's in that present moment. It's not where we're living past memories about a past with regret, and or scaring ourselves thinking about the future and imagining ourselves in a dark place. Okay, because that's not helpful either. But it's about pulling ourselves and focusing on the now. So it requires of us, though, really to accept and navigate what is. Not investing energy in things that we really can't change. Really. So the mindset stuff that we do, the mindset work, is the path really to that deeper feeling of inner peace and transcending that transient idea of happiness, so that we can experience pure joy moment to moment in what we're doing. And this is just as much a spiritual journey as well as a lot of practical action and steps. And so our fifth area of focus is what I think of as energy. And energy takes a number of different forms, really. But whatever we are creating, if we go back to that vision, we are going to create something. And whatever we're going to create is going to require energy of us. Now, our habits, systems, routines, they either creates energy for us or it takes energy away. So to reach our full potential, we need to optimize that energy system that we have going for us. And that takes focus and discipline. We need to say no to more things so that we can give more focus and more room for the yeses. And it requires of us a shift to a what's called a eudaimonic way of being, where most of it is focused here, but with a little on the future, but not all of it on the future, because we're living in the moment, and energy is going to come. We need energy right now as well. So we need to consider our environment, people, places, things. We need to set good boundaries and use technology to help us doing what only we can do, and then outsourcing the rest. It's about protecting the asset, which means us. Ultimately we are the ultimate resource. So we need to think about our sleep and exercise and nutrition, and investing in areas which give us the biggest return. And if I was to sum it up, I think this energy work that I do is about adopting a less but better philosophy for life. So our sixth area of focus is where I think of as skills. Now this might sound a little obvious, but the achievement of any goal is going to require us that we have some level of skill. Now those skills can come in a number of different forms. Now they could be innate, or there could be things that we learn. One way of considering this, and I think it's quite useful to think about in these ways, is some of them are very internal skills, and some of them are externally orientated skills. So internal skills are really things like resilience, decision making, focus, courage, presence, the level of tenacity that we can bring. And a lot of this manifests itself from how we're showing up the world and how we are being. And if you remember from identity and the mindset stuff, these comes down to choices. So we need to focus in that area well, but there's some practice stuff as well. And there's external skills. Now, external skills really about managing conflict, relationships, using language to be able to influence outcomes, getting better at whatever the job is at hand, time management and resource management. They're all sort of external skills. So whatever we are working to, whatever goal or vision that we've got, there are going to be things that we need to either learn, things that we need to practice, or things that we need to do better to get better, more consistent outcomes. And that's the area of skills, but we don't know what those are until we start looking at the other elements higher up. But there'll always be something in this space. So the seventh and final pillar of focus area is what I call subtraction. Now, If you think about this, we've gone through our life collecting ideas, beliefs, way of being, the way of seeing the world, and we've diligently written everything that we've learned down in our rule book. And then we have looked at that rule book and referenced it daily. We've used it to define who we are and how we should operate in the world. But the thing is that the rule book is actually made up. And that rule book is now holding us back from that next level for us, from reaching our true potential. So subtraction is about going through that rule book and then removing pages that no longer serve us. Now, there's going to be all kinds of entries in that rule book that don't reflect the absolute truth of reality or really serve us. We'll have fears, anxiety, stress, imposter syndrome, what's right and possible for you. There'll be money hang-ups, feelings and thoughts about being overwhelmed with responsibility, comparisons to other people and not feeling good enough. Perhaps what we think is right or wrong, or good or bad. There'll be anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, regrets, and they'll all be weighing you down, holding you back from reaching your true potential. So there'll be pages that we need to remove and entries that we need to update. And that's what subtraction is all about. So I think it's quite human to create these rules in our books and things like that. But if it's human to create, then I think it's divine to edit. And that's what subtraction is all about, edit and refining those so it really serves us. And just subtract what doesn't serve us. So there you have it. A few minutes, 20 years of study distilled into 7 clear focus areas, and that was vision, strategy, identity, mindset, skills, energy, and subtraction.